We have come to the end, my friends. This is Endgame, the finale, and it is aptly called Bitter Sacrifice. This is X Factor 68, guys, and this book is such an emotional roller coaster. The print date on it is July 1991. Now, kind of a recap for those that haven't been following along. Pause this video, go check out the subsequent issues that we went over, and if you can, get all issues. This ran from 65 to 68. I know I just said that, but I had a brain fart. It is definitely worth it if you're a huge X-Men fan. So last issue, spoilers alerts. We figure out why Apocalypse is essentially wanting Nathan, because he challenges Apocalypse's future and his powers supersede Apocalypse's. And so it says, the moon. Ever since we founded X Factor, our lives have been dominated, our task defined, in much the same way that the X-Men's were by Magneto, by a single malevolent entity. He calls himself Apocalypse. His actions more than live up to his name. You've had your fun, X Factor, your final, fleeting moments of glory. Now it's time for you all to die. Your bravado, Iceman, is most admirable, a truly fitting epithet for both you and your compeers. Unfortunately, your fate, indeed that of all fabled 12, was sealed the moment you breached my citadel, and instrumental of that ultimate obliteration is none other than the innocent you've come to rescue. Cyclops' infant son, Nathan Christopher. And I love here in the beginning, we kind of see who some of the 12 are. We actually see Cable here, Professor X, Storm. I know it wasn't years later until they finally did Apocalypse the 12, and that's something I've been talked about for years, so I'm kind of glad that there was teases and breadcrumbs for future writers to work with in this splash page as we see the X-Men up again, once again, against the Dark Riders, which they were once again called Riders of the Storm. Glad that name changed. And I just love how all this is happening. Your eyes lead up to see how Apocalypse has shifted sizes to just show, literally in scale, how much of a threat he is to X Factor. Now, Stan Lee presenting, starring X Factor. This is Willis Patachio and Jim Lee plot. Chris Claremont script, Willis Patachio doing pencils, Art Theiber inks, Michael Hessler letters, Dana Morstead doing the colors, Bob Harris editor, and Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. So big name cast on this book. And it is just all-out war as the team goes to work on the Dark Riders. And we can see how Jean's slowly starting to get her powers back. But remember, as we talked about last issue, the Inhumans entered the scene. And we find out that the Dark Riders were basically slaves, where they were eventually Attilan Inhumans that became slaves of Apocalypse. And that's the origin of the Dark Riders. But in the midst of all this, we see Cyclops saying, "Where's the wild card? Apocalypse is ace in the hole." My question no sooner asked than answered. She is the wife of Black Bolt, leader of the Inhumans, a genetically engineered community who long ago abandoned the Earth for the presumably safe haven of the Moon, captured by Apocalypse when he seized control of their great refuge. Evidently, he's been playing with her head, brainwashing her, as he once did Archangel, into his service. My love for Jean is common knowledge, no surprise then my reaction when she strike down. And I love the color and tonal changes, he says, nor Barage's response to my seeming distraction. Careless boy. Fatal mistake turning your attention from me. And while all this is happening, Warren gets sideswiped and come to find out that alongside Medusa, Crystal has also been manipulated. Sweet dreams, fair flyer. Such a shame you'd forgot my sweet sister Crystal, whose province is the natural elements, including the air. And it actually takes the X-Men by surprise, and they become Apocalypse's playthings as prisoners. But because the Inhumans have as much at stake as the X-Men do, they're not, slaves for long. But what happens at the crux of this story, when they finally seemingly think they're about to free Nathan This is where we learn that this fate that happened to Ship was also done to Nathan, infected with the techno-organic virus. And even Ship, because they were able to save a portion of Ship, and he goes, minimal probability of success in either endeavor. Even assuming sufficient time remained to make the attempt, any such healing process is beyond the capacity of current terrestrial technology. Now, I said this last review. When I first read this, it hurt my soul to see a child hurt, just from any average Joe's point of view. But now that I have a son, it's even harder to read this book because Cyclops has to make the decision on what he's going to do for his boy. And what's even worse is Jean says, because Ascani kind of comes on the scene and gives them sort of a 411 on what's going on. And Jean says, is she telling the truth? Can we afford to trust her? Can we afford not to? Blast, blast, blast. Where's my cursed telepathy when it's really needed? One decent psi probe would give us all of our answers. But all I need are all I'm getting are ghost flashes that I wonder, are my imagination. I couldn't save Ann Richardson, my best friend, when she was hurt. And because I didn't know any better, all I could do was sit inside her head and watch her die. I can't even do that with you, little baby. I'm totally... And she goes to say helpless, and then she ends up in Nathan's mind. Even though he's a child, he pulls her in. And this sort of reminds me of... what the hell's the name of that Jennifer Lopez movie back in the day? The Cell. Where when she's inside that serial killer's mind, the child or innocent version of him brings in her as a protector, and that's kind of what happens here. And I love the stark contrast of seeing Jean as this guardian amongst these sort of jagged child imagination, showing what his nightmares are, which is this astral plane version of Apocalypse. And because of this, Apocalypse is smug. He thinks he's won, but he didn't count on Jean being able to pull in a hero, a teammate. And I love here, again, I said this before. One thing I did forget to mention last issue is this blue side of this blue area of the moon. When they're fighting Apocalypse, everyone realizes this was the same place where Jean sacrificed herself so that she would not become the Dark Phoenix again. And Jean says, even though it wasn't me, I feel as though this is where I died. And I think it's Bobby that makes the assumption. He goes, the technology that we thought was Shi'ar actually could have been from Apocalypse. So I like the little tie-ins that they were trying to correlate here. Now, going back to the Dark Phoenix saga, again, Jean brings in an ally to fight Apocalypse. Again, spoilers. She brings in Scott. Now, remember, the only other time that this happens when Jason Weingart, Mastermind, was fighting for essentially the soul of Jean when she was the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. And Scott says, we're a team. Our power and skills and character mesh and interact. We complement each other on a whole myriad of levels. Just because Jean's our only psi talent doesn't mean she's the only one of us who's not able to act on the astral plane. While she kept Apocalypse's avatar occupied, she used Nathan's powers to reach out and grab herself an ally. She chose me. In a lot of ways, I'm essentially simpatico to them both, my love and my son. And because once, a long time ago, I fought on the astral plane to save her, that duel I lost. This one, I won't. And it allows them to get the upper hand, seemingly. Because as we all think everything's over, Scott is told what's happening to his son. And he says, in the distance, I hear mocking laughter in my ears. And he goes, in our line of work, villains and occasionally heroes always seem to come back bigger and better than before. Only the innocent, it seems, truly dies. I spent precious little time with my son for so much of his young life. The least I can do is give him my full attention at its end. And just seeing him, this just breaks my heart to see him holding his little boy dying in his arms, and he has to make the decision, does he let him go or does he choose this complete stranger. And this is the issue where Scott gives up his son. He goes, he is my son. No less, no more now than when you called out to me. You keep saying Kingsman. We share the same birth world. My line, as yours, claims the heritage of Homo sapiens. In all that sense, we are all family. Homo sapiens and mutants, we're all family. Sounds very antithesis to Krakoa, doesn't it? When he's cured, you'll bring him back. Tears in his eyes. No. And so he makes the ultimate sacrifice. And I love how here at the end, if this looks familiar to you, this was essentially kind of the same way that they did the ending of the Dark Phoenix saga. And the Watcher says, and at that moment of decision, he chose hope over despair, life over death. He found within himself the truth of character that others always recognized as much as he always doubted. And as a consequence, tipped a balance whose ultimate consequences even I cannot foresee. But whatever happens, whenever, wherever, I shall be present to bear witness. And marvel, as I have from the first moment I encountered this wild, strange, and ever-fascinating race of beings, whose name for themselves sum up the finest attributes and noblest aspirations. Human. That's why I keep saying, guys, that Endgame, highly underrated and reads like a Shakespearean drama. And why I get so pissed off at how the X-Men have been treated. Why they became separatists, segregationists on Krakoa. I get what Hickman was trying to do in the beginning, but what transpired from that, just for his long-time fans that supported this team of mutants, to see them just become the 180 of what they're supposed to be hurts. And that's why we get so upset. So going back to this is like a breath of fresh air, and seeing why we fell in love with these characters and why they've stayed with us since we were kids, and how a lot of these stories shaped us as the humans we are now. And that's all I got to say, guys. Highly recommend this. If you've enjoyed this series, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is like to get your action figures and comics, and grab this series. If you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next subscribe, that way as I get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or the socials. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.